Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't feel like a real person anymore. He just feels like an evil movie villain. This is not a movie. This is a real person who did horrible, horrible things. I am well aware that America has had a bit of a serial killer obsession for quite some time, but this recent Jeffrey Dahmer show on Netflix kind of makes me feel like maybe everybody needs to take a step back and really think about why these shows or movies about these serial killers even need to exist in the first place. Now, I'm coming at this from the completely opposite side. I do not like serial killer documentaries. I do not watch movies about serial killers. But one of the things that I always found sort of ironically, darkly humorous was that any time there is some sort of awful, terrible crime that I can't even mention in a video like this, you'll always see the news report follow the exact same pattern, which is that they don't want to give a name, they don't want to show anybody's picture, because they don't want to encourage copycat criminals, and they don't want to give the person who committed the crime any sort of notoriety, because you wouldn't want to take somebody who committed such awful, awful crimes and turn them into some sort of perverted icon. And yet, despite all this, after just a couple of years, you could take pretty much any awful, horrible crime and guarantee that some streaming service will give the person who committed that crime their own movie, their own documentary, or their own TV series. Just out of curiosity, all I did was Google search the name Ted Bundy, and there were 8 different Ted Bundy movies, 3 of which that came out in the last 3 years that showed up. All I did was look up this guy's name. The Hunt for Ted Bundy, The Riverman, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, Ted Bundy, American Boogeyman, No Man, No God, Bundy and the Green River Killer, and most importantly, Bundy, an American icon. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that watch these serial killer documentaries, movies, and TV shows because they find that it's fascinating. But I'm gonna be honest, if one of your hobbies involves serial killer documentaries, TV shows, or movies, to me, you're kind of falling into that my hobby is hunting category. I'm not gonna tell you that you can't have a hobby that involves shooting and killing innocent and defenseless animals. All I'm gonna say is that we can both acknowledge that it's a weird hobby. I'm not gonna tell you not to watch the serial killer stuff, but let's at least be honest with each other. That's a weird thing that you enjoy doing. The day after the Netflix Jeffrey Dahmer show debuted, the #1 search term on Google was his name, was people looking up Jeffrey Dahmer. Just in the last few years, there have been TV shows, documentary series, and movies all about Jeffrey Dahmer. I want you to think about the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Now imagine that horrible thing, something that you wish you could forget, something that you wish that you'd never been involved in, kept being brought up. And whenever somebody at Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or HBO was out of ideas, they were like, hey, let's drag that horrible thing that happened to that person that they probably would like for no one to ever mention again, and let's turn it into a 10-part TV series. One of the most comical things about this new Jeffrey Dahmer show is that they were coming at it from the angle of giving a voice to his victims. 17 people, they are all dead. It's always comical to me to hear people who are profiting millions of dollars talking about wanting to give a voice to the victims who died. You can look at that as some sort of noble cause, but let's call it what it is. This is unoriginal greed. There is a serious problem with the obsession that America has with serial killers. The co-creator of the show, Ryan Murphy, has said that this was his intent. His intent was to give the victims, Jeffrey Dahmer, a voice. The only thing is, his name is in the title. For anybody on the outside looking in, who do you think the show is glorifying? Who do you think the show is platforming? And in a world where we are constantly criticizing people for who they do and do not give a platform to, the platforming of serial killers is just insane to me. I think that some of this has come from the reality TV culture we have, which, look, again, I like reality TV. It's fascinating stuff. The only problem that it's creating is the idea of characters. It is blurring the lines between real people and scripted content with characters in it. The people on reality shows are real human beings. Jeffrey Dahmer and his victims are real people. These are not characters. But when you do enough reimagined versions of things that actually happened to real people that had their lives taken away by a psychopathic serial killer, you are turning the person who did those things into a character, because we have already become super desensitized to violence in general. And so when you're making shows and movies about people that committed wildly violent acts that, again, I cannot mention in this video without it being taken down from the internet, this is the sort of problem you run into. Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't feel like a real person anymore. He just feels like an evil movie villain. This is not a movie. This is a real person who did horrible, horrible things. And it is comical that in the real world, we see news reports of these bad things happening and people saying, don't show their face, don't say their name. And then you give it a couple of years, don't worry about not knowing their name, because it'll be the title of the next documentary that you probably watch on Netflix.